Japan Station is made possible in part by amazing people like you. If you'd like to make sure that I can keep bringing you more content about Japan, the Japanese culture, and the Japanese language, then consider joining the Patreon over at japankyo.com/Patreon. You can join for as little as $1 a month, and that will get you early access to episodes, plus ad-free versions. I also take one-time donations over on Ko-fi, Venmo, and PayPal. Links are down below.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Japan Station.
Welcome to Japan Station, the podcast where we do deep dives into Japanese society, language, and culture. I'm your host, founder of Japankyo.com and the anime linguist on YouTube, Tony R. Vega. If you're a regular listener of the show, you know that generally I like to keep things fun and light. I love focusing on things like obscure Japanese slang, weird historical things, and epic travel stories. Every once in a while, though, I like to get serious and focus on some real things going on in Japan. And well, today is one of those days. So recently there's been a lot of attention on the Japanese government's changing attitude towards, let's just say, foreigners in general, but especially foreign residents. In the past week or so, you may have noticed a lot of people talking about the Japanese government's changes to the requirements for permanent residency in Japan. And for good reason. I'm not going to get into all the details because that's what we're talking about today. But basically, a lot of people have felt betrayed, and it seems like it's getting harder and harder and harder to move to Japan and make your life there. I'm not talking about going there for a year to teach English. I'm talking about moving there, contributing to society, and helping build businesses, employment, spreading the word about Japan, getting more people to come to spend money, etc., etc. Like, if you're serious about moving to Japan, it's gotten significantly harder, and it's in the process of getting harder. So, of course, a lot of people in Japan, outside of Japan, have been talking about this. And one person who talked about this in a very recent article that he wrote is Jake Adelstein. I'm sure just about all of you know who Jake is, but for those of you who don't, Jake is a very, very well-known investigative journalist. He's best known for his book Tokyo Vice, which got adapted into an HBO Max series a few years ago, and he runs the Substack Tokyo Paladin, where he continues to write about things going on in Japan. And like I said, very recently he wrote about this whole immigration issue, permanent residency issue, in a very interesting article that caught my attention. So the title to this article is "Welcome to Japanistan," where the foreign residents who buried their lives here aren't welcome anymore. It's not a kind policy and not even a wise one. It's definitely a long title, but you can't say that it's a hard to understand title. You definitely know exactly what the article is going to be about once you read the title. Anyway, I thought this was an interesting article, and this was a great opportunity to finally have Jake on the show. I've been wanting to have him on the show since before I even launched this show, like around 8 years ago. And so I messaged him, and 24 hours later, roughly, we were talking, and 24 hours later, I dropped this episode. So you're going to get to hear the conversation that I had with Jake. And before we get into the conversation, though, don't forget to subscribe to the show. Help me reach more people. Subscribing really, really helps. Leaving a rating and a review, all that stuff helps immensely. I would really, really appreciate it. And of course, if you want to check out the article that we're going to be talking about today, the link will be in the show notes. And the link to Jake's Substack, where this article was published, will also be in the show notes. That's tokyopaladin.substack.com. So if you want more articles by Jake, go there. All right, guys, let's get into it. Here's my conversation with Jake Adelstein. I read your article, and that made me go like, well, I think now's the time to reach out to Jake and see if he can come on the show and explain it for us. So, could you give us a little bit of background about what's going on that front, and how you've interpreted that, how you've put that out in your article?
Sure. I think the article you're talking about was on Tokyo Paladin Substack.com, basically explaining that if you've lived in Japan for the last 10 years and you were thinking of getting permanent residency, what's not going to happen now. And in essence, you have a LDP-led government with Takaichi ostensibly as the figurehead of that government, though she's really just a puppet to Asotaro, the former prime minister of Japan, who is her sort of benefactor and, Abe's buddy back, if you know who Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was. But essentially, there's this very xenophobic impetus to pick on foreigners, to blame all of Japan's last 30 years of problems on the 3% of the population that are foreigners. Maybe will be 4% in the near future. And suddenly, without much warning and retroactively, they've decided that in order to get permanent residence in Japan, you have to make more than the typical Japanese household. You have to have, and they haven't really expressed the formula yet. You basically have to have paid 30 years of Social Security or be able to pay 30 years of Social Security, and have a yearly wage of a certain amount, probably approaching 6 million yen or something, which most of the people who residents here don't have. And many Japanese people wouldn't qualify for permanent residency under these new standards. And it's been very discouraging to people who've made their lives here. I have permanent residency. I've had it for many years now. So in a way, I'm not affected by this, but it doesn't mean that I don't care.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. It does feel like it's out of nowhere. Like for many years, I remember much more of a push to get foreigners into the country and to get them working in these positions, especially like nursing and all that, that Japan has been lacking, right? Like there's not enough people in Japan to do these jobs.
Right.
And now, across the board, it's like, well, we don't really need you. And you guys who have been working hard here and helping out the country, well, too bad. Kind of like it feels very, very much like a betrayal for many people.
I mean, imagine your people, you've come here, there's a lot of foreigners who are taking over traditional jobs that younger Japanese don't want to do, artisan jobs, whether that's making kokeshi or ironware or even swords. And, you've come here, you've learned the language, you've integrated in society, you're part of the community. And suddenly it's like, well, actually, you can't stay. You'll never be able to settle down here because we put in these new rules and regulations that make permanent residency permanently out of reach for you. And by the way, this is Minister Onoda said this, permanent residency isn't really permanent. It's just permission. We can take away anytime we want on the flimsiest of reasons if we feel like it. And, that is kind of a bizarre thing to do because when people got permanent residency here, there was a whole different set of rules and things and hurdles to jump through and to sort of retroactively say like, well, yes, you have permanent residency, but it's no longer permanent. That doesn't really build trust with the world.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah, and it doesn't build trust with the individuals that want to live in Japan, indefinitely. Who I think largely are people that want to settle down and actually be part of Japanese society. I mean that's the general impression that I have. They're not there just to be there 1 year, like for example, work, earn some money, and then go back to their country. So it is perplexing in a way, but it's also like kind of the typical red meat kind of cultural topic sort of thing, right?
So, let's go over some of these things
Yeah,
for your people, because numbers are easy to have. I mean,
sure.
and, there is a small chance that some of these numbers will change as they codify these things into the new rules and regulations, but probably not much. If you filed and are already in the process of getting permanent residency, they're going to apply these new standards to you retroactively from everyone who filed from April of this year. So applicants must earn income above the Japanese household average, which is referenced around 5.75 million yen.
Mhm.
And that's a sharp jump from the old unofficial 3 million single person benchmark. You must show projected pension benefits equivalent to 30 years of employees' pension enrollment. And nobody really knows what that means. If I give you what would have been 30 years of pension, can I buy my way in? What is that supposed to mean? Am I supposed to predict my future in which I will always be earning enough money that I could pay 30 years of pension?
Mhm.
You have to pass the CFR Business 1 level or the JLPT level 2, Nihongo no Ryoku Shiken. It's much harder to get a spousal permanent residency. The practical residency requirement for naturalization increased from 5 years to 10 years.
Mhm.
And it can be revoked if you fail to pay your, taxes or social insurance deliberately. Now, it doesn't even say how many payments you have to miss, right? Like, did you miss one payment? Is that a, intentional non-payment? So therefore your permanent residence can be revoked. And, there's going to be tighter rules on overseas absence and mandatory verification of your tax, pension, and social insurance history. So if you even have let's say you forgot to pay 1 month or you're missing a month, or you don't have the actual record that you paid that much, which actually the government won't give to you if it's like you're talking about your national health insurance, then you won't be able to get permanent residency. I mean, here's one of the crazy things about this thing, that this is where you have problems in the small print. So they're requiring that if you have permanent residency, you can't have missed a single payment of your national health insurance.
Mhm.
But if you went to your local ward office and you said, okay, I've been paying, I haven't missed a payment, can you give me a record of my national health insurance payments and when I paid them? They don't have it. They won't give it to you. And therefore you can't prove that you paid. And they just don't have a system set up for it.
Uh-huh.
So unless you have been meticulously keeping a receipt, or you have all your national health insurance payments taken out of your bank account, which apparently they will accept, then a lot of people aren't going to be able to, make that zero tolerance gap thing for permanent residency. So they're demanding something that is nearly impossible. My reaction to this is a never-ending argument with my bank about automating my payments to the national pension and the national health insurance, but my bank account is in Roman letters, not katakana, because that's really hard for getting overseas payments, and also the katakana never quite matches up. Is it in my case, is it Adelstein or Adelstein, or is Joshua, is the a small a, or is it Shua, or is it Shua? Everybody finds a different way to get it wrong. So, you're demanding things that people can't do. You can go to the National Pension Office and they will give you records to show that you have made all your pension payments. But when it comes to national health insurance payments, it's really impossible for them to print out those numbers for you, so you can't give them the records that they want. It's very punitive and it's very short-sighted, and it really affects the people that Japan needs the most. It means, not just language teachers, but people working in hospitals, people working in old folks' homes, people who are taking over traditional artisan roles, and the 30 years of payments to the national pension system. Well, what exactly does that mean? Like, they're going to assess your ability to pay the next 30 years, or you have to have the equivalent of what would be 30 years paid into the system? This automatically really makes it impossible for people who are like in their 30s, or, if you're over 35, well, are you going to be working for another 30 years and paying into the pension system. So it's ageist, and it's elitist, and it doesn't seem very productive. But the background to all this is, and I'm sure you're aware of this, is that once upon a time there was a very crazy far right party called Sanseito, kind of a coalition of health food junkies and anti-vaxxers and rabid nationalists. And a couple years ago in the upper house elections, they went from having 1 seat to 16 seats, or 15 seats, I think, in total. And, their xenophobic blame Japan's problems on foreigners, and the fake statistics they used to do it. I think they were often quoting a statistic that half of the people on welfare in Japan were foreigners, which was never true. That kind of, political fuel that they got from picking on foreigners, the Liberal Democratic Party saw that and said, like, okay, we're going to have to jump on that, or we're going to have our, our momentum taken away. Like, xenophobia and anti-foreign legislation is popular right now, and let's do it. And unfortunately, we are we, meaning you and me and the people who live in Japan who are not of Japanese descent or Japanese blood or Japanese citizenship, we get the short end of that stick because xenophobia is politically popular, even if it's not wise in the long term. Takaichi Sanae-san has always been a kind of, nationalist psychopath. Maybe I could put that in nicer terms, but she really does not seem to have any remorse or any compassion for people who aren't as wealthy as she is or as powerful as she is. And seeing that, you can get a lot done by harping on foreign bashing or gaijin bashing, that's exactly what she's done. Realistically, right? If anyone thinks about this for a second, why is Japan overrun with foreigners? Why do we have so much tourism? Why are wages stagnating? Why is inflation high? Why is the yen worth so little? These are all the results of 30 plus years of rule by the Liberal Democratic Party, the same people that are in power right now. And a lot of it has to do with policies put in place by Takaichi's mentor, which was Shinzo Abe. He is the one that introduced Abenomics, this kind of voodoo economics that you could just print as much money as you wanted and cut taxes for corporations, and magically that would benefit the Japanese economy. But that was also done by the government forging statistics, which they got caught twice, making it appear that Abenomics was working when it was never working. The other things that have really happened to Japan, and I don't think the Japanese people realize this, is that, under these Abe administration, the Liberal Democratic Party, they changed the temporary staffing laws so that basically most people working in Japan now will never be full-fledged company employees. And why does that matter? Because full-fledged company employees get employment for life. They get 30% more in bonuses. They get benefits. They get pensions. And, that which used to be the Japanese dream is gone. When I came to Japan in 1988, I would say roughly 75% of 80% of the jobs were employment for life. And under Abe and Koizumi and the LDP, a lot of work that was once regular employment has been turned into temporary staffing jobs. And as many Japanese people are discovering, when you work at places as temporary staffer for 4 years, after when you hit the 5th year, that they have to offer you a real job, and they just fire you, and another temporary staffer comes in. So Japan has created a generation of people who are temporary employees with no stability, and thus they don't want to get married and can't afford to get married, and that creates all these problems that are here. Abe really promoted a weak yen, and which we have a weak yen, and didn't deliver on his other promises, which has resulted in a weak yen and also over tourism. I mean, Japan keeps, feigning that they're upset about the bad, actions of foreigners who come here and are crowding Kyoto and Tokyo, but they're here because the Japanese government encouraged them. And increasingly, Japan is dependent on that tourism to bring in the dollars. And ironically, Japan is now dependent on tourism, but they're, constantly running articles in the media about foreigners misbehaving and causing problems and overcrowding places. And, foreigners and permanent residents in the mind of the Japanese public are the same thing. So, every foreigner who, or every tourist who comes here and acts badly and does graffiti on the wall or misbehaves in a restaurant or films where they shouldn't be filming, that becomes mixed up in the Japanese mind with people who are actually living and working here. And, the two problems are conflated. And one of the so-called solutions is like, let's just basically ban immigration to Japan. Let's make permanent residency impossible. I can't see most people clearing these new hurdles. And what does that mean for Japan? Is it a good thing? I guess eventually there'll be no permanent residents, and maybe Japan and the Japanese public will have to muster with the fact that the country is failing not because of the 3%, but because of 30 years of one-party rule.
Yeah. Like I still enjoy, spending time in Japan, and there's so much about Japan that I love, but I see Japan's, I'm not optimistic about Japan's economy. I don't see the yen recovering. I see it getting worse in the near future due to just cyclical patterns in the economy and what's going on, with the bonds, et cetera, et cetera. It's a whole other topic. But which to me, on top of all that, you have now this immigration policy. Why would a foreigner want to live in Japan aside from they got married to a Japanese person? I don't see it anymore. It's becoming smaller and smaller, the allure.
What's really ironic is Japan needs foreign blood. It needs people to come live here. It needs people who can work and contribute to the pension programs. It needs people to take care of their old people because the Japanese aren't going to do it. Mm-hmm. Working at a rest home or care of the elderly isn't a job that's attractive to a lot of people. There's not enough young people who want to do it or are even available to do it because they'd rather take up a better paying job. Yeah. What is the appeal of coming to Japan? If you can't, why would you invest your life, years of your life learning to speak the Japanese language, right? You're going to have to be able to pass level language, JLPT level 2.
And there's so much stuff that you never even use in daily life in N2.
But think about it this way. You can't pass the N2 unless you are living in Japan and studying all the time. And those are years where you're probably not going to be working and not being able to contribute to the Social Security system and not making enough money that you would be a viable permanent resident here. So bust your balls, learning the Japanese language, and miss your, years to be making good cash, or, you're going to have to really invest in studying it without a guarantee that you'll be able to stay in the country where it's spoken, in the first place. You're to ask people to pass Japanese at that level and then gamble that somehow they might be miraculously able to live the rest of their lives here. It's not an attractive prospect. Also, to be honest, the yen is so devalued. The longer you're working here and you're saving in yen, and you have to contemplate going and living outside of Japan with the money you've earned in Japan. That's a loss leader. That's not going to profit you much. So everything that they should be doing to make people want to live here and actually attract people here, they're not doing. The kind of foreigner that they want, they're not going to attract with these new regulations. And the people who have been here and worked in Japan and contributed to society, they're leaving. I can't tell you how many people have written to me after reading the article and I was on the verge of, I finally hit my 10 years and now I'm leaving, or I could see what was coming. I left last year. I wouldn't say it's like a sinking ship, but it isn't. Japan, as it stands on the right, isn't a place where I think people are going to want to go study and invest years of their life. Our plan a career because the end game looks very bad.
Yeah. Like, I mean, Japan isn't making news with AI and, whatever the hottest thing is. Like, it's getting left behind. and this is not making things better.
Well, I mean,
and not to say that everything needs to be AI, but you know what I mean.
I mean, Japan has had chances to become the cryptocurrency capital of the world.
For better or worse, but
for better or worse, and it has blown those chances. You could read "The Devil Takes a Bitcoin," which is like my fourth book, which delves a little bit into that period of time when Japan was really gung ho on cryptocurrency,
and that changed everything.
Yeah, and it could have achieved some of those goals, but they blew it. They were encouraging people to come here and start businesses and be entrepreneurs. And now the business manager visa, it's easier to get one in Singapore, I'm told, in terms of what you need financially.
Yeah, I know. I know there's plenty of Japanese people that leave to Singapore to do business, especially in the crypto industry.
Yeah. I mean, Japan was trying to get people to come here to be innovators and entrepreneurs and start businesses so that the money would be generated and revenue would be created, and that, that's money that goes into the system that keeps it afloat. And now they've basically turned away, thousands of people that might have come here. But we could always see the signs that the Japanese government was deeply xenophobic, and that was a problem. During COVID, there was a period of time where even if you were a permanent resident, you couldn't come back into the country. I mean, I was basically trapped here for several months because the Japanese government announced that, if you left, you couldn't come back, that only Japanese citizens could come back. And it was so bad and so crazy that I believe that, at a session of the UN, one person said to the Japanese government, "Is there something magical about the Japanese passport that protects you from getting COVID?"
Yeah.
So that treatment of the Japanese government's response to COVID, which was to basically forbid permanent residents to come back or leave while letting Japanese people go in and out of the country. And even having the Olympics in the middle of it, in which athletes came into the country bringing in new variations of the COVID virus, showed that the Japanese government was not only xenophobic, but also not very logical in how they handle things. And, unfortunately, we have in Takaichi Sanai-san someone who is incapable of understanding history, incapable of understanding remorse, and only seems to be able to think of the next election. And right now, since she's failed to accomplish anything in dealing with the economic problems, the only thing that she can easily do is beat up on foreigners. And that is, gaining her some popularity and some applause from the far right. But eventually you'll have to actually address the problems Japan is facing, which is wage stagnation, inflation, and people not having hope in the future of Japan because the job environment is bleak. And, the Japanese dream of graduating from college and getting a job for life and then, getting married and having kids is increasingly unreachable for people.
Yeah. And I hope things get better, but it seems like even if there is improvement, it may take a while. Anyway, there's so much more we could talk about, but I know you have a hard out. If people want to, of course I'll include the link to the article, but anything else you want to let people know about, what to check out, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of great things about Japan. I mean, the public healthcare system is great. Housing is still relatively affordable. People are honest and polite. Crime is low. But once you are willing to accept the fact that, you probably only sort of fit in with your own immediate community, it can be a very good place to live. But unfortunately, the current administration and the current, thinking of about half the population is very xenophobic and very mistrustful towards foreigners. And that makes living here less pleasant than it used to be. And if you're planning to live your life here, you might want to rethink that.
Well, thank you, Jake, for the background, and we'll keep an eye out. Well, I'll definitely be keeping an eye out for more articles by you, especially on this topic and any new developments. So, thank you for your time, Jake.
Oh yeah, thanks for having me on.